There's a microphone in the way, but I mean, it'll work, right? Is there a plug-in? You're plugged in. Where are you plugged in at?
This charger is over here, but I've got an Atlas strip that'll reach.
Okay.
If you have a charger.
Does it record it as we do it? It records it as we do it, right? Or is Jennifer gonna, or is Lauren gonna record?
She's not going to record. She's just going to take pictures. That's supposedly this one. Okay.
I don't know. I've never done this before. Not on here. Is it on other?
We've had another fun day. How's yours been?
Very good. I got new shoes. Did you see my shoes? My shoes. And they're super comfortable. Get shoes. Get shoes. Go get shoes. I'm flexible. They're Pozu. I can take you. They're tricky to find, but they're super comfortable. I was a little concerned at first, but not now. I have to buy another pair anyway, so. See? See?
The light's not on, but it says it's charging.
Hi, Theo. Hi, Theo. I see you. How you doing? Did you watch the trailer, Theo? Did you watch it? Give me an answer. It's been good. I'm gonna prep. Oh, Theo.
Right. I was thinking I was going to talk about some inappropriate stuff that my kids said. I'm going to keep it chill. I'm going to keep it
Except
chill.
at school, it's advertising. You knew that part, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I guess I have to keep it close to me so I can read the chat.
Yeah.
Oh! This is not the most flattering view. No, I didn't. I've been here. Was Galaxy's Age? Was it cool?
You're going to watch it tonight.
Yeah, we're gonna watch it tonight.
You went to Rebels, remember?
No, I was in here for women's changing roles,
Oh, cool.
and
I was interested in that one too.
it was. I mean, it was informative. It was informative.
Okay, good.
It wasn't what I had expected, but it was informative.
Okay. Remember this. Really great. Really just good to hear. The cast talking about the show. We got cool posters.
We got cool. 4 minutes. I had a handful of people that I hoped were going to come, but I don't know.
Oh, well.
Just think it's coming. It's okay. It's fine. Kind of was hoping Cam.
In general,
Yeah, so that. The drinks looked cool in air. That was cool. How are we going to do that?
There's no even. We're on the furthest that we could be.
No, we're not.
Just about.
Podcast.
Right?
One room over.
Margin of.
They're marginally further than we are.
10 feet ahead of all this. No, like I'm honestly not holding my breath. If we get in, awesome. But I'm already bracing for that.
Did you see my photo? Did you see my photo? I'll show you my photo.
Yes. Right. That's awesome. Look at that lovely helmet.
And then she went on Twitter later. I was telling her, I can't remember all the Twitter people. She's like, Daniel's so awesome.
Yeah.
I'm awesome. I told her, I was like,
Such a good thing.
really just a little. She's like, it's okay, so am I. I was like, no, you're not. She's like, yes, I am. I'm like, it's a lie. You're lying. Don't lie to me. It might be, Thea. Yeah, probably. It's like a 20-second delay. People are going to think I'm just talking to a computer. So, yeah.
Go off for frozen.
She's crazy. What do you want to see? The photo? You want to see the photo? You want to see the photo?
Honk is listening in.
It's the only one.
Comes on out to the upper school. I'll take care of it.
You'll get.
You'll teach us the kids. You may come to me.
What's up, people? Hi. More people. Hi. Hey, people in the chat. We're here. Give us like one more minute. You can't see Dee's face because my microphone is like right in his face. Hold up. There.
I think I'm gonna do this.
Okay, cool. Is it on? Now it is.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome. I'm glad that you all are here, and I'm so excited to talk for a bit about Star Wars role-playing games in the classroom. I'll start by introducing ourselves. My name is Dee Travis. I am a high school English and history teacher at Curry Ingram Academy in Nashville, Tennessee.
Woo!
Yeah.
Let's go, Brent.
That's right.
Yes. My name is Danielle Powell. I teach middle school at Curry Ingram Academy. I'm also a leader of we both do tabletop RPG clubs after school. And the reason it looks like I'm talking to my screen is actually I have my students in the chat live on YouTube right now so that they can answer questions themselves if you guys have questions for them. So also this way they get to see all their hard work, how it gets paid off. I'm not just talking to thin air, I promise.
Before we jump in, I do want to take just a moment to talk a little bit about the school that we both teach at Curry Ingram. It's in Nashville, Tennessee. It's a school that empowers students with learning differences to achieve their fullest potential. There's a few different reasons why we use that language, learning differences, as opposed to learning disabilities. The primary reason is that not all of our students have diagnosed learning disabilities. Some of them do. Our student body is diverse, and the common denominator among the students is that for one reason or another, they have had difficulty in a traditional classroom environment. We have many students with ADHD, with dyslexia. We have students on the autism spectrum and beyond. It's a wonderful place to work. I love what I do. I love the kids. It's a beautiful place I sometimes take for granted, and then I'm reminded it's a beautiful campus. That's the high school that I work in. Danielle snuck some Star Wars dice, and there's a before and after.
Which one?
Oh
yeah.
And then there's it's where we go for lunch every day. It's a beautiful campus. If you know anyone who you think might be a good fit, who experiences difficulties in school, feel free to pass it along. Curry Ingram Academy as something to consider. It's a really special place.
Yep.
I love the kids that we work with. In talking about role-playing games in the classroom, we got really excited thinking about playing Star Wars role-playing games with our students. It's something that I wish I had had in high school. I would have been all over it at that age. In middle school.
Yeah.
But in thinking it through, I found myself very unsure of how to proceed. Ahsoka's face was my face. I just didn't know how to get into it. And I started putting feelers out among some of my students, and there was a lot of excitement, enthusiasm around the idea. I had a number of students who wanted to participate, but I was feeling this weight of, am I going to learn a game in a few days? And how am I going to pull this off? So if you work with students or young people in any capacity, and you like the idea of doing a Star Wars role-playing game with them, but you're not sure what that means, that's some of what I'm going to speak to, is that novice approach, what I've learned, helpful advice. Danielle is not only a more experienced RPGer, but she was working with a group of students who also had more experience. So she's a deep reservoir of wisdom and tips and tricks when it comes to this. So I'm gonna kick it to her in a moment, and she'll share the more experienced approach, a couple different ways to go about it. I'm not going to launch into a full Fantasy Flight commercial, but a little bit, because I want to share a little bit about what they do. If you don't know, Fantasy Flight Games is a company that I think has done wonderful things and continues to do great things with the Star Wars license. I feel like it's just the golden age of tabletop gaming in a lot of ways, but especially as a Star Wars fan. And a lot of that has to do with what Fantasy Flight is up to. They are behind some of the games such as X-Wing and Imperial Assault. Armada is the one I've played the most of. I got to demo Outer Rim yesterday, and that was really fun. They have a booth on the show floor, which is really cool, but they also have a separate room in this building where you can play their games. So I encourage you to go over there and check it out. Yeah, the show floor booth they have is awesome. Then if you go in this room, they just have a bunch of their games available.
They actually have sign-up sheets right now for if you want to do any of the RPGs that we talk about. They actually have the X-Wing games and stuff, and those are open. But they have sign-up sheets specifically for the RPGs. There's one at 10 a.m. and there's one at 4 for today and tomorrow and Monday as well. So what we are doing sounds cool, or you want to play RPGs, come play. I'll be there at 4. I want people to play with. Tomorrow, not today. For tomorrow.
They make 3 different Star Wars role-playing games: Edge of the Empire, Force and Destiny, and Age of Rebellion. And they explore different facets of the Star Wars universe. So Edge of the Empire takes place on the Outer Rim, and it's that world of scoundrels, smugglers, bounty hunters, people who would mostly like to be left alone, avoid any Imperial entanglements. These are the Hans and Landos. And I've always been interested in that moral gray, because Star Wars is such a clash of good and evil. But there's that moral gray area where some characters are. And Edge of the Empire delves into all of that. Force and Destiny is more about the spiritual side and the Force powers and what all of that means. And then Age of Rebellion is mostly the military conflict between Rebel and Empire. And whatever aspect of Star Wars you would like to get into with students or with a group, you can do so in one of these games. And they are built on the same mechanics, the same engines. They use the same proprietary dice. And it means that you can even jump between them. If your group starts out in the Outer Rim, but they decide at some point, we'd really love to join the Rebellion, then you could shift the characters over to the other game. And then maybe we want to learn the ways of the Force and even train as Jedi. You can move between the games with relative ease because they share so much. So I appreciate that about them. when it came to wanting to start and wanting to learn, I took the same approach that I take to most games, and it turned out to be a mistake. So this is something that I learned along the way. This is a word of caution. When I start a new game, I usually open up the box and start reading the rules. It's just fairly standard, I think. And I'll pore over the rule book until I have a good sense of, okay, now I feel ready to try it out. But some of you experienced RPG players already know what I'm about to tell you, that with an RPG, that's a terrible idea. The core rule book of an RPG is a dense, ponderous tome with so much in it. It is overloaded. Yeah, I'm kind of poking fun there. Page turner. And I don't want to knock it too hard, because the fact is the core rule book for these RPGs, it's a fantastic resource, but because it is so comprehensive and so loaded with information, it is very hard to get into. It's like if somebody said they were interested in learning more about a religious tradition, you wouldn't hand them the holy book and say, just read this cover to cover. Just read the whole Bible, read the Quran. There's perhaps a more approachable introduction to what is this about? And I figured that out pretty quickly, trying to read the core rule book of the game and realizing I can't make heads or tails of this. Fortunately, if you look back at the boxes for the 3 that I showed, these are actually the beginner games of each. So each of these RPGs has a beginner game. And this was a lifesaver. These are so well orchestrated. The idea is that you open it up and jump in without reading anything, without reading any of the rules. You start with your group and you just move through it together. Now, I did ahead a little bit because I am that way, but truly it is designed to guide you all as a group, the game master and the players, to guide you all through. And it functions like a really well-designed video game tutorial. The best ones don't feel like clunky tutorials. They feel like you're just playing the game, but they're scaffolded so that over a course of a few minutes or an hour, it actually teaches you what you're doing. And this was that way. The very first mission was right off the bat. We were running from these Gamorrean guards, and we ducked into a cantina, and we had to hide, and then there was a fight. So it was exciting immediately, but over the period of 3 or 4 sessions, we got introduced to new concepts, and by the time we were done, we had learned the rules. And I was so impressed with that. And it made it approachable for me, for the kids. By the time we finished as a group, we had more knowledge and confidence and felt like we could move on. So I can't speak highly enough of the beginner games. They were a really good fit for me and my crew. This is how I set up my classroom. I just pushed some desks together, and this is an after-school thing for me on Tuesdays. Right after school, I just push some of my desks together, and I have kids come in. And initially, I had 5 show up, and then they talked to their friends, and pretty soon I had 10. And that was the next hurdle for me as the game master, was figuring out, how am I going to do this? Because I didn't want to say no to any student. I didn't want to turn anyone away. But I also realized I can't realistically have this just grow and grow. If we get into a combat situation and I've got 10 players, it's just going to take forever. It's honestly not going to be that fun. Okay, you roll, and then 20 minutes later, it'll be your turn again. But hold up, like, nobody wants to sit through that. I didn't want to get into it. The beginner's game, again, kind of steered me in the right direction. It comes with some preset characters. For Edge of the Empire, it came with a human smuggler, Han Solo-esque character, Tosh, and then these 3, a medical droid, a bounty hunter, Twi'lek, and a Wookiee. And with these 4 characters, I told my students to just team up. So I had 2 playing as the droid. I think I had 3 teamed playing the bounty hunter. A couple were the Wookiee. So they grouped, but it was only 4 characters. So 4 PCs, but then each one was controlled by a few different ones. And what I found is that the kids didn't really mind that so much, because the fun of an RPG, a lot of the fun, is just being present and getting to participate in the storytelling. And they took turns rolling the dice, but they made decisions as a group. So when it would come time to, okay, the Wookiee, Lorik, here's the situation, what are you gonna do? The three students would put their heads together and just start talking, and then they would announce their decision. And they enjoyed that, and it totally worked for me. So I recommend, as a GM, I would not want to do this with more than 4 or 5 characters. You can do it with as many students as you want, as many people as want to participate. You can make that work. But in terms of number of characters, I didn't want to go much over 5. I can imagine it getting complicated beyond that. This was my crew, I think on the first day, some of my students, and then the next time we met, we had quite a few more around the table. One of the things that I read in the rule book, and it just became so true time and again, the rule book encourages you as the GM to say yes. And I realized what I really care about here is just that everyone have fun. And on that first day, I was kind of nervous because, again, it starts in a combat situation, and I was checking the rules. Am I doing this right? I think I am. And then one of my students, Marin, she's just there on the far right edge. She turned to a friend and said, "This is the most fun I've had all week." And in that moment, I knew I'm doing it right. Even if we're getting the rules all wrong, we're doing it right because students are having fun. And that's so much of what this is about for me. If students can form positive associations with school, if they're having fun at their school and they're being social with friends, and we're not all looking at our screens, but we're making eye contact and we're laughing and we're talking, like, that is such a win in my mind. That is a lot of what this means to me and what it's about. And it's what I wish I had had, again, when I was that age. So anyone who works with teenagers knows, keep you on your toes in a really fun way. My scenario started with us in a cantina, and I said, okay, there's these Gamorrean guards, they're after you. You've got to hide. So here's the situation. This place is mostly empty. There's some dark tables that maybe you could duck into one of these booths. There's rafters up overhead. You might swing up there. There's a bar and a bartender. There's a Twilight girl dancing down the far end. There aren't very many people in here, but time is against you. So what are you going to do? And Lorik, the Wookiee, went first, and he just immediately said, I'm going to go talk to that Twilight girl and see if she's into me. And I said, okay, maybe I wasn't clear. Hired thugs are after you. Like they're coming to kill you. He was like, no, I heard what you said, but Twilight girl, like, come on, priorities. Like, and so immediately as a GM, my goal is to just, as much as I can, to say yes. I made it clear that my main boundary with them was going to be sticking it with canon. I think early on, one of them said, so what if I go to an intergalactic KFC and Colonel Sanders is there and he's a Sith? And I was like, no, stop. Like, we're going to stick within actual Star Wars canon. But within that, I want us to have as much fun as we can. So during one of the battles, they fought this Trandoshan bounty hunter, like Bosk kind of. And Lorik got in this amazing killing stroke. And he said, let's say, can his head come off? Like I slash, like, can we say his head flew off? And I said, absolutely, because he did a cool roll. And I said, okay, based on what you rolled, yes, let's say it. The head came off, and then the medical droid said, can I keep it and like put it in the freezer? I was like, I don't know if your ship has a freezer. Let's say it does. Yes, the head's in the freezer. So as much as I can go with them, the better. And when we finished our beginner's game, before moving on, I decided that I felt comfortable enough that I could start scripting my own. If you don't want to do that, there are so many different modules you can pick up. Fantasy Flight has published so much, but I wanted to start writing it for myself, and I felt like I knew the game well enough to do it. some of the kids wanted to create their own characters at the end of it, and they felt like they knew how to do that. And they wrote backstories, and some of them told me, here's what I want the whole group to know about my character, and here's something I want just you to know, and you can factor this into the story later. So it was so cool. By the end of the beginner's game, the kids felt more confident. They were getting into it, and we're kind of going our own way now. We've branched off. We're in uncharted space, but the beginner's game helped us get to that point where we all felt comfortable and confident, and I was so glad for that. And now we're having a lot of fun. We've gotten our feet wet, and we feel like we know what we're doing. But again, if you already know what you're doing, if your kids already know, then there's the more experienced approach.
Thank you. Yay. Okay. I've been so patient.
Yes.
Okay, so mine was the more, I definitely went a more detailed approach with mine, or less detailed approach. I've done it with these kids before. They've done it before. They all worked with each other. I also had 11 kids. When we first started, I asked them, which one do you want to do? I had a kid who was doing 5th edition D&D. He's awesome. And everyone wanted to do Star Wars and D&D. It's like, that's not, okay, we'll figure this out. So I have my groups divided into 2. I don't know what I wrote. Can I get it closer? Can we make it bigger? I don't know what I wrote. What did I write? I don't know what I wrote. It doesn't matter. The point is, I kind of just went with it with my kids. I can't see it. What does it say? Help me.
I got you.
Nope. It's okay. Point is, with my kids, we kind of they basically told me what characters that they wanted. And I said, okay, cool. I'm going to make your characters for you. So they gave me a basis. I made the characters for them. I had the rule book I had played before, so I knew the basic rules for how to play it. So the rule book for me wasn't a instruction manual so much as just a reference in my particular situation. I didn't even use like the starter stories because I kind of had an idea of what I wanted them to do. But now that I had 2 groups, I had to kind of like divvy them up into different directions. Yay! So I had my 2 groups. Each group had a different objective. And that is all I told them. I didn't tell them where they were. I didn't tell them who they were with. I made them introduce themselves to each other in ways that seemed logical. One of my girls is a Balkan spy. She didn't introduce herself to anybody. She just snuck on the ship and went with them. To this moment in our game, she's the only one who knows the objective, but she won't share it. Sorry, guys. She's not going to share it with you because she's a Balkan spy. She doesn't want to. She's got the information. She's playing her character very well. But they each had different objectives. The first group was supposed to go rescue some rebels that have been stuck on a detention center. The first thing I tell them is, do you know the planet? 2 of the kids say, yes. I'm like, sweet. How? And they're like, wait, what? I'm like, how do you know the planet? Do you like it? Do you not like it? What's the deal? And they're like, I don't like it because my family was kidnapped by Imperials and imprisoned on the planet. I was like, sweet, perfect. And then one of my kids was like, I'm going to put on my Mando armor. I was like, yeah, no, you don't have Mando armor. What, why? You tell me, why don't you have armor? Because you're not going to have armor. You're level 1. Sorry, Theo. So I made him tell me how he had armor, and we kind of went from there. The other thing I had them do was, as opposed to rolling for initiative, I discovered I follow a channel called Hyper RPG. Anyone ever watches that? If you don't, you should. Plug Hyper RPG. They're on Twitch. They played a Star Wars show called Pencils and Parsecs. And there's different ways that they roll initiative, but through the channel, they have this thing called Popcorn Initiative, where you have to popcorn it to the next person. So instead of rolling for initiative, you would say, I'll tell you which ones you're fighting. Like there was a point where they were fighting TIE pilots. It's like you have 3 TIE pilots and a droid, and each one of you. Now you have to popcorn it. And so instead of rolling for initiative, they say, okay, I'm going to pass it off to Sedona, who's playing the Balkan. Cool. Sedona, who you pass it to? I'm going to pass it to one of the droids. I'm like, cool. Then I roll, and then I pass it on. This way, it goes faster, and the kids have to pay attention. They can't sit there and think, oh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I come up, it's like 3 people next. No. They have to pay attention so they know that it gets passed. There's also repercussions about it. If you do popcorn initiative and you let all the monsters or the opposing forces go last, they get to go first. So they get 2 turns in a row. So my kids learned this the hard way. And it was very educational. They learned quite a bit, and they learned we don't do that anymore, but they did popcorn initiative. I also gave them a survey from my group at the very beginning where they told me What do you love about Star Wars? What are you going to do about Star Wars? Why are you playing this game? What are you interested in? What kind of character do you want to play? That didn't turn out the way I wanted. They filled it in, but they weren't interested in the survey. They just wanted to play the game, which is great, which is perfect. So next time I do it, that's something I'm also going to fix. Also, when I would play, I would have background music and video in the background to kind of set the mood. And they loved it because they could kind of like get immersed within the story. When I play, everything I do with my RPG is very, very immersive, and it's all about the story. I don't care if you fight things. We could have an entire session where we are just talking about what's the best food on Tatooine, and that's fine. I mean, we can have fun with that, so let's just go for it if that's what you want to do. Also with the dice, I learned that my kids in middle school, we've played so many different RPGs. We played Fantasy Age, Titan's Grave. We've even done 10 Candles, if you've ever played that. We also played Tales from the Loop. This is the best for them for dice because they get it. They understand that this symbol cancels out this symbol. It takes them a while to figure out which symbols cancel each other out, but by the end of it, they're doing a better job interpreting the dice than me and my friends do when we're at our house. They're like, oh, I got this. I got it 1 success and I got 3 threats. I'm like, yay, I don't have to come check your dice. This is awesome. They also understand if you get like a triumph, that's kind of your shining moment, and they're gonna like write things about it. So it's kind of this is your moment to stand out. So they love it when they get that as well. Helpful lessons. I have the students, like I said, role play right away with random scenarios. That's where the Mando helmet, what planet are you on? I've also had a lot of kids who kind of take these stories outside of the RPG and they're writing short stories in classes about it, which was not expected, but love it. They're definitely in the story. They're in the zone and know where they're going with it. They do a better job at keeping track of the story than I do. I also don't plan an awful lot. I literally gave them the missions and said, go. And then we just kind of make it up as we go. So if I need to figure out if they're a monster or someone that they are fighting, I will look it up or quickly research it in the book and hope for the best. I still follow the rules. The kids know there's rules. I've already had one who was knocked out and someone had to revive him with a stim pack. So they know that they're not safe through the whole game, but they also know that there's that freedom that they can kind of take it where they want to go, and I'm going to go with it. I go with the whole improv thing, the yes and. So yes, and what are you going to do next? So I've only told them no once, and that was because she wanted to do something that was not Star Wars related. I'm like, that's not how that works. Try it again. I don't even remember what it was, but I was like, reverse, and okay, cool. Let's see. Oh, we also discussed what metagaming was. You guys know what metagaming is? Because you have the 2 groups. Metagaming is where if you know something's going on that you're not supposed to know that's going on in the story. So, for instance, my girl who was the Bothan spy, she knows where the rebels are, or she knows where the captives are. But I had to talk to them about she knows, but you don't know she knows. So we discussed metagaming and trying to keep that separate. It's hard to explain to middle schoolers what metagaming is. Once they figure it out, they'll usually ask me, do I know this? I'm like, no, you don't know this. And they'll go with it. They're kind of quick to get it. I think they do very well with metagaming, better than some adults I've played with who will, because I think adults are a bit more sneaky. They're like, I know this and I'm going to totally put it in the story, but they don't know it. Kids are like, no, it's cool. I don't know. Cool. All right, let's keep going. Students got into there's these, sorry guys. There's a light and dark side dice. And I don't know if it's in the rule book. I did my own take on it. If they roll the dice, I think it is in the book, and they get a light side spot, they get a light side token. And they, the way I play it, can use that light side token to get a boost, which is one of the little blue dice. There's also dark side tokens. If they roll a dark side, I get a dark side point as the GM, and I can do something as well to help me out. So the kids got so into this. Normally with kids, you give them something that's like free. You get a free point if you do this. And they're like, yeah, all right. No, they don't want to use those points at all. So I could have like 4 or 5 light side points and 2 dark side, and they would refuse to spend it because that meant I got another point. And if I get a point, I could do something to mess them up. So the way they were using it was very collaborative, and it worked very, very well. And they were 100% into it. They also, at the very beginning, kind of fought each other against it. So they kind of wanted to go on the mission, kind of didn't. Some of them were arguing with each other. They learned very quickly that it needed to be collaborative. They need to work together. They need to work as a team. And from there, the story has really kind of taken shape to the point where the story they've made is very Star Wars epic. I even have a girl who jumped on a X-Wing and took off to go find her lost sister because she's force sensitive and she rode really, really well. And there is a Jedi that escaped Order 66 with the rebels on the other base, the other group's base. So she jumped on she stole a TIE fighter, flew to the other base to go find her sister because her sister should be with the Jedi, but her sister's been missing. So that's her goal, like that's her end game, and that's what she's going for. Killing all the TIE fighters and destroying stuff, that's just like whatever to her. She's going after that, and she's done a great job going for it, and I really hope she finds her sister. Although we only have so many, so I am sorry, Ainsley. I don't think you're going to find your sister, but we're hoping. I've thrown in a couple different characters that are well known. They ran into Lando at one point in time. Lando had a ship. He was on the base. And they were going to borrow the ship, and he said no. They were going to have to play a game of Spock to get it, and my kids chose not to.
Good choice.
So they also got their first mission on the ship from Ahsoka. Ahsoka was the one who gave them their mission because they were up on like a Mon Calamari cruiser, and I kind of explained who was there. I was like, you see this woman dressed in all white. She's got the Leiku or the head thing. It's not Leiku, but it might be. I don't know. Something like that. I was like, she's got her hood up. She looks very commanding and authoritative, but kind at the same time. And one of my boys goes, "It's Ahsoka!" I'm like, and her name is Ahsoka. All right, let's keep going. So you figure that one out really quickly. At the end of all of mine, because mine was and it's still going on, also one of the boys followed the girl to the TIE fighter place or to the other. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do with two of them who are no longer fighting the TIE fighters. That story's gone now. Figure out a new story. But I like that. I like the fact that it's off the cuff and I can't predict where they're going. And that's the best thing about playing games with kids. But at the very end, I gave my middle schoolers, all 11 of them, even if they weren't playing my game, because I had two who would rather play D&D, which is perfectly fine. Do you. But I gave them a survey. The first question I gave them was, what has been your favorite moment in the game? This was really interesting. They gave me some really good answers. They had talking to Lando. I liked infiltrating the Imperial base. When they set off every single alarm in every facility. Every one of them. The sniper dude who was up at the top so that they couldn't get into the facility, they snuck by him. But once they got in, they set off everything. I'm like, what do you do? But I loved it. And then they figured out a way out. One of them anyway, they set off everything. But I love that that's their favorite moment. When they got a triumph and they were able to sneak into the base without being seen by the sniper. The droid who could dodge, there was a droid who kept dodging everything they did. And it was like a regular, he shouldn't be dodging at all. Then we asked, where were you hoping your characters will go from here, assuming the adventure is a success, to survive, adapt, and overcome, finding the Jedi stories and her long-lost sister, obviously. I am hoping that my character will help others and save the rebels. This is my favorite answer ever. This is so sincere. She just wants to help the rebellion. It's so sweet. I'm hoping my character becomes a head spy. She will. You're fine, Sedona. She'll be fine. What sort of adventure would you GM if given the chance? I had a lot more answers. They kind of went off on a tangent on some of them. Sneak into an Imperial Star Destroyer was one. A Sith Inquisitor or something inspired by the legend of Dark Plagueis. This girl knows her stuff. She is my Sith, but like in a good way. She's the one who's looking for her lost sister. Self-professed Slytherin. She's a Sith. I love her. She's great. I think she'd kill everybody if she did that adventure. And then I would probably have, this one was my favorite. I would have all the players be the prisoners witnessing the mess of random people trying to save them. I was like, I love it. And if nothing else, I want that one to happen, even if I have to do it myself. I'd love to see her do it because she's GM'd before, but that's just so meta. I love it. We also said, do you find yourself being more social because of table RPGs? I think the answer speaks for itself. They said yes. I have a lot of kids. The kids that I invite to the middle school RPG club are kids who are really, really shy, who have a hard time making friends. Our classes have no more than 10 kids in them. I have classes that have 4 kids in it, which is amazing. But we have kids who have a hard time making friends. I get it. It's middle school. I had a hard time making friends. But when you put them in a situation where they have to role play and they have to interact with each other, they come alive and they become this, imaginary character who can do anything, and it makes them kind of come out of their shell a bit and really talk to people and interact with people and make friends. Because when you share an adventure like that, where you're being attacked by TIE pilots and droids, and one of them, your party runs away from you, and now you're stuck and trying to figure it out, you've bonded in a way that not a lot of kids get to do. And it's the same for adults. Like you bond with those groups you play RPGs with, even if you only meet once every 3 or 4 months. You're friends with them. You share something in common. So.
And that's so much of where the value is in my mind. It's just the social dynamic.
And then my final one, which is kind of what started this whole panel in the first place, should tabletop RPGs be used in an academic way? Everyone said yes. I would love to see this in a classroom setting. I teach history. If I had more time, I would use tabletop RPGs in my class on a regular basis, especially things with ancient history and things like that. There's a couple like computer games I found that work really well, but having them get to play the characters of historical figures and just go through the history is something that would just be amazing. And they get it, and they understand that this has more implications than just playing a game. And they made that very clear by answering that question. So, yeah.
There's more that we could say, but if you have comments, thoughts, questions for us or for the middle school students, we would love to field those.
I got like 7 of them here. Yes.
Sorry, I came in a little bit late, so I didn't hear your names. What was your name?
My name is Dee, and this is Danielle.
Yeah.
Question for you in particular. So you mentioned that eventually when you had a big group of people, you had like 3 people running one character. Now, when the group got bigger, or when they started creating their own characters, how did that work out? Did they all work together to create a character?
So there was it was kind of a mix. 2 of my students who had been co-running the medical droid wanted to just stay the course and stick with that character. They tweaked a few things like the name and this and that, but mostly they just kept where they were. But some of the other teams broke up and people wanted to create their own. And so I made it clear that I'm still not wanting this to go much over 5 characters. So once I said that, then they started kind of working together. One student who had thought about creating his own character said, actually, I'll just partner with so-and-so. So it worked out. In the end, we wound up with 5 new characters, and I had one student who's trying to create a 6th, and I said, maybe we can work that character in at some point, because another reality of RPGs is that not every single person comes every time. And so there are instances where this character is not represented today, so let's pull that other character in. But for the most part, I let them know I still want to keep it low, and they were okay with that. Yes.
Yeah.
So you said how you had half of the group on D&D.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't have just been smarter for like half of your day D&D and the other half hours?
Yeah, so in the club it's only an hour. So half my kids play the D&D with their student GM. So I have a student GM that one, and then I play Star Wars. And depending on where we're at in the story, if there's a really good point for us to switch, we'll switch halfway through the club. It was rocky at first. They had a hard time transitioning, but now they get it. So we'll play for like 30, 40 minutes, and then we'll switch sides, and I'll take the next group. Some days I'll do the entire one group and then the entire one group. But also the way I designed it, my group of 5 is now a group of 7 because of the TIE fighters. But then I also have a kid who doesn't want to do it anymore. He'd rather play D&D. So, but that's what I did. Yeah, I had 2 groups, and we would switch off every once in a while. Yes.
Comments. You talking about the beginning games now, you have for generating characters. I just wanted to mention that Dennis really does have support for those video games. So there's 2 additional character sheets you can download from their website.
Oh, very good.
As well as expanded, like a second adventure
Mhm.
in that same group. So for example, spoilers, but in each one of these ones, the group is able to basically establish themselves for the base. And the online expansion of those video games allows them to have additional adventures in securing the base, maybe making it friendly or just doing more with the base than they would have time in the game itself. Actually, there's a 4th game based on Force Awakens.
Yes.
Yeah. I've actually run the 3 beginning games, and they're close enough, so even if you have, for example, I ran the Pete people, which was a great character, and even with the downloaded ones, that was a little short. But the characters in each of the games, as you mentioned, they're based on the same system, so you can actually mix and match. So I took some from the Rebellion book or games and brought them into the Scoundrels one, had them be part of the initial captive crew, and that led them to, so I basically combined all the adventures from the 3 games together, that eventually led them to get together.
Yeah. I actually, for my campaign, combined Age of Rebellion and one of the starter adventures they had for that with the Edge of the Empire. I put the 2 together, and I had self-generated character sheets for the kids who didn't know what they wanted to be yet. And then pulled them from both and just, I'm a mess. I just shoved everything together and somehow made it work. So I'm probably not the best at the beginning. Yes. All the way in the back.
Just speaking to the tangible advantages that you guys have seen, is there any specific example that you can think of a student getting a chance to really interact with other kids and therefore kind of progressing in the classroom, maybe being a little bit more vocal or being a little bit more social in the classroom? Is that something that you guys have seen?
Absolutely.
That's really, really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. I have 2 stories for that. One is from this year. I'll do this year's first. I had a boy who was very, very shy, or at least he didn't talk to a lot of kids. Whether he was shy or not, he just wasn't very vocal. And brought him to the club, or told his parents about the club and said, hey, I think he should try this. I think he'd really enjoy it. And this was before we played Star Wars. This was last semester. And he jumped in and immediately took a leadership role with those kids. We played Tales from the Loop, which if you've never played is like 1980s meets Stranger Things. Is really cool. And your characters can't die. The kids know that, but they can have like, I'm not advertising that. Sorry. Back to this. We played that and the kids couldn't make up their mind what they wanted to do. He jumped up and he's like, all right, we're going to do this. And we're going to go here and here and here and here. And he kind of led the group for a good portion. And I saw it in social studies too. So from there, I could see him in social studies being like, I'll take the group. I'll do it. I'll be in charge of this. Last year, I had a girl who I did the same thing, said, hey, I think she should take the club. We played Fantasy Age and a couple things like that. And she was having a hard time just kind of relating to other kids and getting to know them in a good way, or in a productive way, not a good way. And by having her in the club, I had several teachers comment about how she seems way more social. She seems more socially aware of where she is in her interactions with people. And the fact that other teachers were noticing it just in her everyday life was enough for me to know that, yeah, she's getting something out of this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it as well. Just students in the hall or in the class talking about something that happened at the RPG the night before and spurring this ongoing interaction and dialogue. And yeah, I mean, that's a real thrill for me to see students getting something else out of it. Yes, sir.
So going a little bit more to the extreme on that is you mentioned that you've seen this sort of in other classwork, so students might write about it or talk about it in other classwork. Do you ever experience it with some of your students where the interaction is so exciting that becomes all that they can talk about and that they can go on about, and then it's sort of hard to pull them into maybe I don't know exactly how you're into other subjects or back into school. So while they are very dynamic and social and very excited about it, they have no problem discussing the game or maybe something that happened during that session, that seems to then be the only thing that they can focus on. And then sort of change that, or to shape that social interaction back toward being a little more neutral, palatable for all students, so maybe not people that have been playing that game?
I don't see it very often. I see it occasionally. I know, and it's not usually they know when it's done, it's over. And they'll talk about it with just the people in their group. And we're a really small school, so I don't know if it would be different in a bigger school when you have a bigger class, and so they could kind of get lost in the shuffle. We're lucky with how small our classes are to where they almost have to be engaged within the subject. So if they go off on the tangent, the teacher is going to be aware. And usually if I have a student like that, it's because they're not so focused necessarily on the game or the interactions or the story they're telling. They're focused on the system itself. So I have a kid who is the GM for the D&D. He is very, very good. His story is amazing. His dungeon is like ridiculous. Like I want this kid to work for like Green Ronin or something because it's ridiculous. It's amazing. But yeah, it's kind of that he's fixated. So he does it. But because we're such a small school, all the teachers are really good at being able to be like, okay, back to the topic, or incorporating what he loves into the subject matter so that he can still express it, but it's still in an academic way. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, but one thing you said is because of the smaller class size. So I was wondering if in the larger class size, if maybe, you had, somewhere upwards of 15 to 18 students, it might be easier for a student to sort of just focus on that and maybe miss some of that as well. And maybe, if you have focus students in the class, and then you have the quiet one that's just focusing on something.
I think in general and I hate saying it because I love RPGs, I don't think it's quite socially there to where these kids will necessarily feel comfortable still talking about nothing but RPGs. It's still almost like a hidden thing. Like I play RPGs and they'll mention it and they'll talk about it, accept it, they like it. But I think there's still that stigma there. Because I've had a lot of times where I've taught, not at the current school, but at my last school that I did an RPG club, where the parents didn't want them to take the RPG club. They're like, that's Dungeons and Dragons. You don't want to do that. And they're like, it's going to make you a nerd. And I had girls who didn't do it because their parents had a stigma about it. And it was heartbreaking. So our art school environment is very different. It's very particular. But I can see where that might be a problem, but I'm wondering if the stigma is still too high to where they wouldn't feel comfortable making it very obvious that that's what they were doing. If that made sense. It was awkward. Yep.
How do you compare the like Force and Destiny and the Star Wars D20 as far as getting your students acclimated?
Yeah, so in my experience, the Fantasy Flight system is in some ways more accessible. I think both are fine games. A lot of it just comes down to personal preference. But I found that the dice system that Fantasy Flight uses is easier to just jump into. It requires less math, which might be a barrier for some students. The Fantasy Flight dice are symbols. Danielle used a great phrase, reading the tea leaves. That's kind of what happens. The kids roll it and you say, okay, so some success, some failure. Based on what I see here, I'm going to tell you what it means. I found, just as she said, that it was fairly easy for the kids to get into that. Whereas the D20 system is more complicated in some ways, but I think both are fine games. Out of respect for your time, I suppose we'll draw to a close, but if you have additional questions or thoughts, if you would like to pick our brains or come talk to us, feel free.
Could you guys all say goodbye to my kids real fast? Say bye.
Thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Bye, guys. Yes, thank you.